Welcome to our Red Hat Government Symposium Executive Insight Series. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and we're here with Craig Heartwell, CTO for Presidio Federal. Craig, thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
So let me start by asking, where have you seen examples of how the federal government has really looked to data to fuel digital transformation?
Okay, so if you draw a journey map for digital transformation, what you'll find out is that data is both the starting point and foundation for that journey, as well as data exploitation becomes the summit of that journey. So data is obviously extremely critical to successful digital transformation. The federal government's recognized this clearly by virtue of, we have two data strategies that have been published, the OMB's federal data strategy and DoD's data strategy. But both of those have a common objective, which is basically data-driven business transformation, because digital transformation is really just business transformation that leverages digital technology. So there are 5 real key areas where data is going to drive maturity and success in that business transformation that's going to happen. The first one's IT modernization. It's kind of obvious. If you're going to tackle data exploitation, you have to have really good modern networking, cloud computing, hybrid access, all that great stuff that you hear everybody adopting nowadays. Workforce transformation, because one of the problems that the government typically has is keeping up with the commercial world on talent and key capabilities. Cultural transformation, this is a big one, because adopting data as an asset and creating an open culture in the federal government so that you can share and collaborate, those are objectives within those data strategies, and those are a bit foreign to a lot of the federal government. So that's also pushing on that front. Continuous business process improvement using automation and augmentation, and then last but not least, better security. The more you know, the better you can be secure.
Well, thank you for listing all those. That makes sense. Next, let's talk a little bit about open source. How has open source technology played an important, if not increasing, role as the federal government has faced critical challenges such as the COVID-19 response?
So this might be the unexpected, but probably not so surprising answer. With regard to the pandemic, the role that open source played for the federal government was not nearly enough. The reality is, it's not a criticism of the federal government either, and I'll tell you why. First, none of us had ever been through a pandemic before, so we were just woefully unprepared for anything that the healthcare crisis of this magnitude, and we're very fortunate that it was not anywhere near as bad as it could have been. But the second and much more important one is that open is a culture which is not prevalent in the federal government, and so they literally were not in a position, they didn't have the right posture to fully take advantage of open source and open projects throughout the pandemic. However, public sector at large produced and collected a ton of data, and that data fueled hundreds of open projects in the open community, which were very useful in addressing various aspects of the pandemic as it unfolded. And that's the culture that we need to have. So I think the wake-up call was heard. And as a result, the most significant contribution that open source made for the federal government in dealing with the pandemic was as a big lesson learned. Posture is a balance of, preparedness is a balance of posture and planning. And depending on the nature of the issue you're dealing with, posture can be much more significant. Agility and flexibility are key to disaster recovery and continuity. And the country at large faltered on both of those. So now what we're doing is we're kind of getting in shape for the long haul with the workforce at home hybrid work model. And I think this puts a lot of emphasis on the workforce and cultural transformations that the federal government's undertaking right now. But like I said, I think they heard the wake-up call, and I think we're going to see a lot more emphasis on open projects, not just in the consuming open source like the federal government has traditionally done, but literally contribute. Which is really what the open model is all about. And there's just huge benefits to be gained in that.
And then shifting gears just a little, how would you say open source enables better cybersecurity for government agencies?
Okay, so that's a key issue, obviously. We're really great at collecting and disseminating threat intelligence. we're not so good at applying it. And the reason is it's voluminous and it's complex. And so it takes time to absorb it, it takes time to apply it, and it takes particular skill sets and all of that kind of thing. So open source plays hugely in there because you need that flexibility that open source gives you. You also need the expansiveness of the skill sets and the innovation that come with open communities that provide contributions to open source. Specifically, the kinds of things that you get out of using open source in cybersecurity include you can get in front of your threats a little bit better because you have the flexibility, adaptability, and responsiveness to do that kind of thing with the threat intelligence that we have. We can build systems that are actually moving targets, which is really important when you have dedicated threats and persistent threats, which the government definitely does. And it's for all kinds of reasons. Some of it's cyber terrorism, some of it's just trying to steal state secrets, but it's all, a big issue. So open source, open source solutions, by and large, particularly in the hands of a SecDevOps team, can really increase response time and repair and recovery time for any incidents. And you're always going to have them. They can be completely mitigated, but you're not going to avoid being a target. So it's really important you get that in there. So one of the initiatives that I'm really big on in the federal government is the development of reference architecture. So we have cybersecurity reference architectures. We have a zero trust architecture, and there's some work involved in doing implementations, reference implementations of those architectures, which basically allow you to work out kinks and plan strategy, and then decide where you're going to go from there. Those can be really complicated to do, and open source is hugely beneficial from a agility and a cost effectiveness standpoint. And it would give the government an opportunity to truly take ownership of those solutions. NIST and CISA have worked with industry on that kind of initiative, but not in an open sense. But now the GAO has the ball. I'm really hopeful that GAO will put more of an open culture around that initiative. And again, the workforce and cultural transformation that kind of brings to light, if you're going to own it, you have to have the talent to own it. You have to have the brain power to take advantage of it. So it's really important to kind of couple those changes of culture with changes of technology as we move forward. And then there are these synergistic benefits. If GEO, for example, were to create these projects, those are really fun projects. They would bring in talent. They would bring in people both inside and outside. As an open project, clearly we're going to have outside talent, but even in-house talent. I mean, ownership of these kinds of things becomes something that technologists really enjoy. So this is a big opportunity to kind of take that next step in security, and open source would be a huge component of that.
Finally, Craig, what trends or technologies should federal agencies really be paying attention to as they plan out their investment strategies in the coming year?
There are so many. I mean, laundry list, and you'll probably get a really good list from some other people. So I'm gonna take a different tack on this. I'll give you 4 of my favorite technologies, which I actually think play really well here, but are maybe not as obvious. And then I'm gonna talk to the trend, which is from a different angle. Collaboration. This is again at the forefront because of the whole hybrid workforce and work at home model, and it's becoming something that is becoming as important as some of our security initiatives. And collaboration vendors are really stepping up on this issue. There's so much really great new technology and capability coming out for collaboration that this is definitely a place that the government should be paying attention, taking advantage. Automation, obviously. My mantra is, automate everything you can, augment everything else, and continually improve. If you can actually do that in any business, you'll be successful. So as long as you know what your business is. Edge is cool. We don't stress it enough. It's going to be a real game changer. But more importantly, it doesn't seem to be appearing in the reference architectures for cybersecurity. And it needs to be. You can't have a weak link in your security profile anywhere. And Edge is definitely going to be adopted. It's definitely going to be applied. And we need to be looking right now for how to apply the same zero trust principles in the Edge architecture as we do with just everything else we do. And then the really cool one that I like, native application and no code, low code development tools. These are hugely, high productivity tools for DevOps teams, where you can just literally create stuff on the fly when you have to. And really, this really meshes really well with the whole open source approach, where you need to be agile and responsive. And these are technologies that kind of get you there. On the trend side, what I'm going to do is kind of put out a warning shot and say that there's a trend that we need to avoid that it would be very easy for us to fall into, and that is we have so much going on. There's so much emphasis, executive orders on cybersecurity and zero trust, and all this money that people are going to have that they're going to be responsible for spending wisely. It would be very easy to lose focus on other initiatives that are equally important, but aren't kind of in the buzz, aren't on the obvious list. And my kind of soapbox on that one is critical infrastructure modernization. If we lose focus on keeping it with critical infrastructure modernization, we're going to have problems that are much, much worse than the Colonial Pipeline shutdown that we had just a little while back. And that's a much bigger space. So it needs a lot of attention, and it's equally important with all of the kind of federal IT system security initiatives we have, and the workforce transformation and the cultural transformation. I mean, these are all things that we have to do. Big long list. We need to do them all well for the safety and security of the country. So there's a lot to do, and this is one of the reasons we're extremely busy, and we're going to be for quite a long time.
Well, Craig Heartwell, thank you so much for sharing your observations, getting up on your soapbox on that last trend, and mostly sharing your insights with our audience here at the Red Hat Government Symposium.
Sure thing. Love to do it.